of positivity. I mean, there's negative psychology out there, which is depression and issues like that. We know all of that. But if there's a science for that, there should be a science for happiness and the criteria of happiness and positivity in life. And of course, all of the benefits that come along with it that are accrued through a lifetime of positivity, being able to channel it. And some people are naturally gifted. Some people are far less naturally gifted, but there are tools and there are skills and there's a science to it. And Dr. Martin Seligman really is the forebearer of this science and this movement. And there are many different ways, so to speak, to slice the pie of what are the contributing factors to a life of positivity, which also means health in relationships and physical health and many other really important benefits. And we're going to tackle it from a 5-part criteria, which is called in the vernacular PERMA. And these 5 things stand for positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning and accomplishment. Last week we spoke about positive emotions, and tonight we'll be focusing on the E, engagement. Positive emotions might be easy to understand just from the words, like you have to feel good, you have to do good things that make you feel good, you have to have emotional good feelings and intellectual good feelings, and even physical foods and experiences for sure. Engagement, of course, is going to be much harder to define. PERMA, or positive psychology, is used in many, many, many fields. It's being used today all over the place: therapy, positive education, military training, health, counseling. In fact, in the military, it's actually used to build resistance. So people with positive attitudes can actually create a level of resistance that they wouldn't have had otherwise, which is very unique. You wouldn't have thought that. And the last thing is it's used really for something called positive interventions, which is kind of what we're going to do here with you. We're having an resilience training. There we go. We're going to have an intervention over these next 5 weeks in which we're trying to sort of get into your life, into our lives, to rethink it, to rework it, to sort of fix around the wiring. And of course, the benefits will accrue, and they are much needed in today's day and age. Okay, so again, we're going to have time for the science behind it, which my brother, Rabbi Dr. Yosef Lynn, is going to present, and then the Jewish take on it, the areas in Jewish life that really underscore the tenets, the scientific discoveries, and then, of course, the practical exercises and homework that we can do. Okay, so it's great to be here with you, Brother Lynn, and for us to be together. I'm coming to you live from the Catskills. This is the green screen, not my bungalow. Okay, and my brother is coming to you live from Jerusalem. That is not a green screen. That's really Jerusalem behind him. Okay, so I'm leaving it into good hands. Rabbi Dr. Brother Yosef Lynn, great to be back on screen with you, and looking forward to what you have to show us today.
Okay, thank you so much, Shmuel. Before we go into the world of engagement, I want to maybe just set up a story which describes what engagement is and really goes into the theory of what I want to speak about tonight. And what I've found in the work that I've done and with students that I've been involved with, that the concept we're going to speak about tonight is just a total game changer as far as your well-being is concerned. I'll tell you, the story goes like this, is that it was one night and I was doing some work late at night and doing just a whole bunch of things I didn't want to do, but I had to do, just some difficult tasks, and they were a bit frustrating. And I was exhausted and the tasks were getting done, but I was just wiped out and lethargic. And all of a sudden I looked around my office and I saw that there were a whole bunch of things that were disorganized. Things hadn't been filed and things hadn't been put away, and a whole bunch of binders I was looking to start, I hadn't yet started, and just things that have been building up for a long time. And I said to myself, you know what? Let me take a break from what I'm doing and let me get involved and try and maybe clean up a little bit. Maybe it'll give me a little bit of energy. The story goes, about 4 hours later, there I was into the wee hours of the morning, totally energized, totally alive, not hungry, not thinking about being tired, not frustrated. And I was just in this place of where it was a groove. And I was energized and I was alive. And what I'm describing right now is something which is called, really, it's about the world of being engaged. and it's a concept called flow. And flow is a very powerful concept that when we speak about in the world, when we speak about the E of PERMA, this world of engagement, it's going to be built around a concept called flow. This is a book which I highly recommend, and what I'm going to speak about right now is going to be based off of this book. Now, the author of the book, it's a very difficult name to pronounce. There are actually YouTube videos about how to pronounce him. Basically, it's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. So if you're trying to type it into Amazon to find the book, good luck with that. But this book we're going to speak about tonight is really just a description and the science behind this concept called flow. Now, in order when a person has a flow experience, like similar to the one I just described, there are many different ways about how people kind of speak about it. People speak about it as in a situation where you're in the groove, you're not thinking about time, you're energized, you're not hungry, you are just totally immersed and you're on fire. And you really feel that you are so energized by what you're involved with and you're so focused by what you're involved with. And that is really the world of engagement. And we're going to speak about it soon. Should not just be a random thing that happens to you in your life. What it really should be, and what the science of positive psychology focuses on, is these are actually experiences that you can create. And if I know how amazing I feel when I actually create those experiences, well, why wouldn't I want to go out of my way to figure out how I can create as many of those experiences throughout my week as possible? Now, there are different flow activities that can be that are out there, and everyone has their own kind of flow activity. It's different for people. There's a great chart which I want to bring up here, which kind of describes that the activity has to have many characteristics to it. But this chart is actually really amazing. The activity, basically, for it to be a flow experience, it's got to be something which has a high amount of skill level and a high amount of challenge level for you. And therefore, when you have that, you hit the upper corner, which is called a flow experience. If you have a situation where you're really low as far as your skill level is concerned, but the challenge is really high, you're going to see that creates a lot of anxiety because you can't rise to the challenge. And you're going to see that all of a sudden, if the challenge level is really low, but your skill level is really high, so that can be quite relaxing. I mean, that's relaxation, which is fantastic. But this kind of flow experience, which again, everyone has those experiences which puts them in the flow. What could put me into flow could put someone else into a state of anxiety or put someone else to sleep, who knows? But this flow experience really has to be in the world of really, again, where it's the high challenge level and it's a high skill level. Those two things come together and you hit that upper corner, which is really that flow experience. What I want to speak about here is just to clarify, last week we spoke about the world of positive emotions. So what are the major differences between just the world of positive emotions and the world of engagement? And there are two kind of major differences, okay? The first is that when people are in flow, you ask them, they say, what do you feel? They'll say, nothing. They are in it, they are immersed, they're just one with what they are doing, as opposed to what we saw before, positive emotions. Obviously, there are lots of amazing feelings and sensations that can come along with that. And number two, that in the world of flow, and this is what we're going to get to right now, is that there are no shortcuts. Meaning, positive emotions can happen by me putting on a great song, and I hear the song, and fantastic, I have positive emotions. Or you give someone a hug, you feel a connection. But in the world of flow, flow is going to take some effort. And really, where it's going to take some effort is that it doesn't just come by just you doing something and all of a sudden, ta-da, you have a feeling. It actually is going to require a bit of work on our end. And what you have to really think about, and we're going to get there a bit more, is you have to think about what activities put you into flow. And all of us have these flow activities, and you have to think about what are the activities that put you into flow. And the more you can answer that question, it could be something which can drastically change your well-being, because now you can try and figure out how you can place more flow experiences into your week. Now, it's actually quite sad, and not just sad in a depressing way. It's a real loss that many people, when it comes to the world of kind of flow experiences, they're random, and they don't know how to generate them, and they don't know how to make them happen, and they happen once in a while, and that's it. And that's a real, and when I say sad, I really feel even stronger. It's a missed opportunity, because imagine if you're able to tap into a certain kind of state of being when you're in a situation of flow. Well, wouldn't that be something that you want to create in different parts of your life, especially in your professional life? So the key to success and the ticket of the world of flow and how a person actually gets there is when a person uses their natural strengths. That's how you create flow experiences in your life. Now, what we are amazing at, and we are professionals at, and we're awesome at the world of labeling the issues that are wrong with us. When you ask people what's wrong with them, they can name you many issues. Ask people what's wrong with other people, they're even better at doing that. I'm also guilty of that. But when it comes to actually labeling where things are going right with ourselves, it's very difficult. And you have this, for anyone who's touched the field of social work or psychology or psychiatry, the famous manual out there is the DSM, which is really it's the mothership of categorizing all psychological, emotional, psychiatric issues, and it's really an unbelievable kind of work where everything is categorized in the most amazing way. And unfortunately, that was only until recently that the field of positive psychology said, wait a second, we're so amazing at being able to label and break down and describe all the issues we have in such an awesome categorized manner. Well, what about all the places that were actually great? What about, let's try and make a category, or let's try and make a manual of our natural strengths. And only until recently was the field of psychology focused on doing that. And what's actually so important for tonight is your natural strengths are going to be the very thing that are going to allow you to have a flow experience. When a person uses their natural strengths in the right way, not only can a flow experience happen, but you can recreate tons of flow experiences throughout your week. And really what it has to come down to is people have to become great at not only understanding what their natural strengths are, but living their life accordingly, especially in a way to create more flow experiences. And it's actually quite fascinating in the world of work and our professional lives. There's some research from Gallup which speaks about the fact that when it comes to strengths in our professional lives, that people who don't use their natural strengths at work on a daily basis, besides the fact of lacking flow experiences, it actually leads to a lot of a real lack of well-being. And for a place where we dedicate so much time and effort, which are our professional lives, that more than anything else, for a person to not be using their natural strengths at work every single day is something which is a loss to yourself for your own well-being, and a loss to the organization or the company that you're working for, because they're not getting the best of who you are. And these flow experiences are awesome to have, but the engine behind these flow experiences are really a person not only understanding what their natural strengths are, but deploying those natural strengths. And that's something we're going to spend some more time on towards the end of the show. But what I want to do right now is I want to hand it over to my older brother, to give you just some beauty as far as how the Torah looks at the world of engagement. Shmueli, all yours.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Lynn. I find this personally fascinating because of the 5 things, positive emotions, feelings, and the rest, relationships, meaning, accomplishments, those things make a lot of sense to me. The fact that this idea is 1/5 of the entire package of what constitutes positivity in life, and then all of the things, of course, that come from it, longevity and health and relationships, etc. It's an amazing thing. So learning about this and thinking about, well, how does that fit into a Jewish life? I actually found that the theme of this thing called engagement, of flow, of being in the zone. I think in basketball, you're in the zone, like just raining threes from anywhere on the court, just get the guy the ball because it's in the zone. This thing of being in the flow is an amazing concept. So I have three areas in Jewish life where I feel that this is the most pronounced. Okay, and we'll start from low to high, I think, on my scale. The first is a concept. We know we have lots of things called mitzvot, and mitzvah does not mean a good deed. It does not mean a good deed. Okay, they're very unpleasant things that are a mitzvah to do. Okay, and how to do them. The word mitzvah is horribly translated as commandment. The word tzav is in biblical language, the root of this word mitzvah actually means connection. And these are the main ligaments between the physical world down here and the source spiritual world up there. Okay, the main things, the areas in which we like sort of can propel ourselves and make these IP address connections to our spiritual source, from which reigns in all of our life force and all of the spiritual blessing that we have. And we know we have classically 613 of these. And even though some of our teachers say, yeah, there are 613 main, like, skeletal, structural, components called mitzvot, but there are thousands and thousands of mitzvot that are consequences of those, that are tertiary, that flow away from. But the point is, we have not just a regiment, but we have opportunities all the time to have focused connections. And if we do a mitzvah without intention, if I do it by rote, my eyes closed, I'm supposed to pray, I know my mind's in the beach in Bimini, that's certainly not working. But there's a principle over here which is remarkable, which is called osik b'mitzvah, patur b'mitzvah, which means like this: when you're involved in something, it's like a forward-thinking manifestation of the things called flow, which is that when you're involved in a mitzvah, you're actually exempt from any other mitzvah that comes your way. Completely exempt, as if the Torah didn't write it. A famous example that the Talmud actually debates is, hey, if I find a lost object, there's a mitzvah in the Torah to look after a lost object. If I'm actually guarding someone's lost object, I'm in the process of announcing it, trying to find the owner, but I have real serious responsibility. It's a mitzvah for how I actually care for this thing that I find that belongs to another Jew. I have to look. When I'm actually doing that, if someone came to the door and asked for tzedakah, asked for a charity, I might not be obligated to give them the charity. Might be a nice thing to do, but I won't have an obligation, a heaven-sent obligation, because I'm actually focused on something, and that focus, that engagement is key to the quality of the performance of the mitzvah, and of course to our relationship with ourselves and how we perform things in the world. That's one idea. This is the theme that permeates all of the actions that we do that are mitzvot. This idea of once you're in one, you're totally, thoroughly engaged in mind, body, and soul. So much so that as if there's no other commandment in the Torah. The second idea is that we have a mitzvah to actually learn Torah. Now, learning the Torah does not mean, who was Abraham. I mean, that's a very basic, rudimentary example of learning Torah. We have this idea of what's called a melut b'Torah, which doesn't mean like learning like you study in a university because you just get information in your head and you want to know historical dates. There's an experience called a melut b'Torah, which means, and there's no good word in English, but it's engagement, completely thoroughly engaged, like pushing the meter to 10, where our minds focus and we're pushing that. There's a mitzvah, and it's probably the strongest mitzvah that we have, of engaging God and the godliness in us through the interaction with the Torah itself and the learning of it, and pushing ourselves up against it to the nth degree. But there's something called a melut b'Torah, which is not a word in English, other than totally immersed, engaged, but like schwitzing it out, right? Like lifting the barbells that are too hard for you to lift. You got to go intellectually into the Torah, and when you're in that place, something amazing happens. King David wrote, "Lule seros chashashua." He said, if only the Torah is this thing called a shashua, which is a weird word in Hebrew, shashua. It's really shasha. It's this strange, beautiful sort of tapestry of the language, which our sages define as a back and forth, like a game. When someone's watching a movie, they're not thinking about life, they're in the movie. When people are playing a board game or whatever these things are, or when you're engaged out there, you turn off from the world, you're totally engaged in that world, and there's a tremendous pleasure that comes from knowing everything else is shut out except for this, and I can completely engage in it. Now the problem is movies and board games and the Sunday crossword puzzle it leaves you empty at the end because it didn't fill anything. Torah has the mandate that when we study it, and Jews should study it, have times set aside every single day for engagement in the study of Torah. It's not an empty, it doesn't leave us empty. It leaves us so full, and everything builds on itself day by day by day, not just with wisdom and epistemic knowledge out there, but with a deep benefit that is the engagement of the spiritual realm through the study, the amelut, the engagement of Torah. And I was blown away by the idea that this is what we're supposed to do every single day. It's the biggest mitzvah. We have to do it. We do it to our children. We do it for ourselves. This engagement at the highest level, it's not recreation. This living in the orchard, our stage is called an orchard of the Torah, where you enter into it, and it is fully encompassing. It's amazing the scientific benefits that come from that, besides just the wisdom in and of itself. And the last thing, the third area, which I think is the highest area, is like, when are we most engaged as Jews? When are we in a flow? And it's called Shabbat. It's very simple. If you take the time-space continuum, and we actually carve out in time and space an entire section of our lives, a heartbeat every 7 days, where we disengage and we are completely engaged. That is a flow that every Jew should feel like my brother was saying, like there's nothing else in the world. We actually have, and by the way, when Shabbat begins with the lighting of the Shabbat candles, technically it's not a sundown issue. We know that Shabbat will begin on Friday afternoon at sundown, but it's not a sundown issue. In theory, you can actually begin Shabbat before the sun sets, because it's a mind state. It's a state of mind. It's a state of being, a state of existence. And technically, even though the 3 stars come out on Saturday night, if you're in the zone, Shabbat is still there, and the laws apply. It's an amazing thing. If you light the candles at 5:30 in the afternoon and sundown's not till 7:30, the laws apply to you. They apply to you in a very deep way, in a profound way, because it's a state of mind, a state of existence. So we have this thing called Shabbat, and we go into a zone. My wife would always say, Shabbat is not a day off, it's a day on. Like, we're in the game, we're in the zone, and everything, all the accoutrements, all of the wallpaper, all the backdrop, and everything we do, all the engagements of Shabbat is really a giant 25-hour engagement of sorts, which I think is probably the healthiest thing you can have, besides all the side benefits of turning your phones off and things like this, and disengaging from the craziness of the world. It's the actual positivity of engaging in a time-space continuum where everything is themed to that experience of engagement, of flow. Okay, those are 3 amazing ideas in Judaism, that any mitzvah we're involved in with that intent that we can have, and that engagement, and that's what it's there for, and that's what it's the call to action in the learning of Torah, in the beauty and the orchard of what a Torah is. If you go into it and you're there completely, and it will not leave you empty at the end. And of course, the 25-hour experience of real flow, of real engagement, called Shabbat. Okay, those are the Jewish ideas. Now we're going to get practical, some exercises for us to do with the actual science of engagement. So I can invite my brother back on so we can get to the details. I really do, Yosef. I think it's this idea amazing of you wouldn't think it's like 1/5 of the whole picture, but it really is. So let's get in some practicalities here together and bang it out. So the first thing is, you ended by saying that really, when a person's experiencing flow, it will be a continuum or a construct of the degree to which a person is actually engaging their natural strengths. Right. Okay, that you said very beautifully. So of course, my first question is, that's really nice, Rabbi Doctor, but like, how does a person know what their natural strengths are? Is there a way for us to really hone in on that? That'd be question number 1. And then we want to know then how do you actively go and use them in a way that is flow oriented, so that we can actually have the benefit you're talking about?
Okay, so let me tell you some. Maybe we'll try and go really practical. So, some tips here, and let me deal with your first question, which is, how do you kind of discover your natural strengths? And what's really amazing is like this, is one thing that's fascinating is if you look in the world of our experiences in life and the patterns in our life, is that the patterns in our life are repeating themselves nonstop. The negative patterns and also the positive patterns. And, people are amazing at being able to figure out and kind of fix, and locate all of the negative issues in their life and all of the negative patterns they have in their life. But where people struggle is being able to pick out all of the positive patterns. And actually, the place that is actually the real indicator for you to be able to find what your natural strengths are if you look through the patterns in your life, you will actually be able to find out what your natural strengths are. There are actually some tools out there that can help you figure out what your natural strengths are. One tool is out there, which is from an institute called the VIA Institute, and you can find an online test that they have, which can help a person discover what their natural strengths are. A second tool is a tool called Strengths Finder, and that's also a tool that people use in order to be able to discover what their natural strengths are. And that's also kind of a test you can take online, and you can Google both these, you can find them. But even more than these tests, that, the tests are amazing and the tests are wonderful. But again, if we look at our lives, it's amazing how much repetition we have. So we become amazing at looking at that repetition as far as our issues are concerned. But what we don't become amazing at is looking at that repetition as far as what our natural strengths are. And if you look at numerous situations over the course of your life, you're going to see your natural strengths are the same over and over and over again. And the more a person can really identify those things, these two tests I just showed you can be helpful, but the more a person can identify those things and then set up their life accordingly, okay, not only does that bring up a tremendous amount of well-being, but if you're looking to create more flow experiences, which is what we're talking about tonight, your natural strengths are the one-way ticket in order for you to be able to get there. It's amazing. You and I have both seen people that when they're in that groove, when they're doing something that they're totally immersed in, that they're totally engaged in, they come alive. They're energized. They are excited. They have a tremendous amount of well-being. Like it's awesome to see. And it'd be a shame for people to not know the tools about how to create these things. They happen in such a random way that it doesn't need to be that way. And imagine if you knew how to create them in your workday, with your kids, on the weekends, whatever it may be, how different your life would look. But the driving force, the gas in the tank of everything is a person not only knowing what their natural strengths are, but living accordingly.
So the fascinating thing, we'll get to that. One thing I want to get to in a second is, like, of course, why are we interested in things that are not our natural strength, right? Clearly we are. That's what you're saying. That you can be interested in X, Y, and Z, but the truth is A, B, and C is what you're good at, and right. You're going to have this engagement, this flow of far better experience if you really identifying this. So we'll get to that in a second, the cognitive dissonance, so to speak. But I do want to ask you, though, like, okay, so let's say you go through Strengths Finder, and you know what your strengths are. You learn about your strengths. How. So what do you do? I mean, what do you actually do now? I wake up tomorrow morning and I realize, like, I really have a strength in this area. I didn't appreciate it as much as I do now after this program tonight and after my Strength Finder, exercise I went through. But, like, what do you start looking for tomorrow morning when you wake the alarm?
Let's say you, Shmuel, Lynn. Let's say you have a strength of creativity, right? You have a strength of creativity. Now, you're running a humongous organization, okay, impacting the world as far as Jewish education is concerned. What you have to figure out is that in your everyday, okay, besides for all the things you have to deal with, okay, but how are you figuring out how is that creativity muscle being used throughout your day? You're going to see when all of a sudden you sit down and now you got to figure out something creative. You're trying to design curriculums for this upcoming year. You're trying to think of out-of-the-box programs during this pandemic. You're going to see that all of a sudden, you're now tapping into that creative side of who you are. You're going to be alive. you're going to be excited, you're going to be engaged, and therefore, of course, there's tons of things that you do in your professional life that you just have to check the box and make it happen. But where your organization is going to get the best of you, where you're going to feel the most excited in your work, is when you can take that tool of creativity and now, boom, you're using it tomorrow. Right. So if that's one of your muscles, let's say, you're going to see that's going to make you come alive. So
a good example. Like why? So let's talk about where the dissonance comes from. Why aren't people doing this? Meaning, why is it that we have interests that are outside the realm? You would think that everyone would be interested in doing what they're good at, but clearly that's not the case, right? So that I thought that anything I'm interested in is what I'm good at. But the truth is, I actually remember, I was actually, when I was in high school, I was super strong in math, super strong. All right, it came very natural to me. Scored extremely high on the tests and things like that. And I went to university. I became an English major and a playwright, right? Which was like, there was not one guidance counselor ever that said, you're really good at math. That's your natural strength. I never took one math course after that, nothing. And you could say that it's it was a problem because there was this whole side of me that had natural proclivity and gifts, and they were never engaged and they were never cultivated. So what's going on here? So why aren't people doing this? And
I'll tell you this. The research shows that there's basically three major reasons why people don't live their life according to their natural strengths. Okay? Three major reasons. Number one, ask people what they're bad at. They can give you a whole list. Okay? Ask people what other people are bad at. They'll give you a longer list. Right. But people don't know. I can't tell you how many brilliant people I've sat in front of, and they just got, you ask them, what are you great at? And you get a very average answer. Again, my whole, this is a separate conversation, but there was a point in my life where I also felt that I couldn't answer that question. And that led me on a whole life search in order to figure out all the information we're discussing right now. But many people just don't know them. Number two is people have false expectations. And this may sound a bit funny, but our mother is a wonderful, amazing lady, okay? So our mother did something when we were growing up. I'm sure she's watching somewhere, okay? What did she do? She said to you, honey, you can be amazing at anything. And she told you, Mom, I'm going to try this. Oh, you'll be amazing. Mom, I'm going to try it. Oh, you'll be everything amazing, okay? Let me tell you something. There are some things in life that Yosef Lynn is not going to be amazing at. No matter how much time and effort and energy I put my life towards, right. It's just not going to happen. And what happens is people have false expectations, and instead of in some way realizing that I can't be everything, what the real job is to realize that I can be something, and to really focus ourselves and not get so caught in the places where you can't be something. Now, you're never going to get anywhere in this world without hard work and effort. But for my mom to tell me, and it was amazing, and I love her for it, that I can be anything I want, that's not true. Okay, when you watch the NBA bubble right now, I don't care how much I was going to practice when I was younger, there was never a chance that I was going to be in some sort of situation like that. Okay, right. Number three, and this is quite a difficult thing, but we live in a world where, unfortunately, there's a certain label of, if you have these natural strengths, you made it. That's it. And if you don't, you're an average guy. And, and what happens is you think that your natural strengths aren't so special. But if I had those, that's amazing. And it's a real sad thing, because if you look at a lot of the research about where people go and they make like a big midlife change, a lot of it is because they listened to what other people wanted them to be, and they didn't listen to what their natural strengths were, and therefore they went the wrong direction. At some point midlife, they say, I got to change something here. I got to, get control of the life that I want. And they all of a sudden make a switch, and usually that switch is towards doing something which is based on their natural strengths, really accepting who they are and not living according to what other people want them to be.
Right, and that's a tough thing for in parenting also. So many parents obviously are living vicariously through their kids and trying to turn their kids into their vision of the kids. And a classic tenet in Jewish child raising is that this is like you've been given a deposit of your child, but like you have to take care of this and raise it according to its natural strengths and his or her greatness. It's a lot of midlife crisis. I think is about that. You see in universities, University of Pennsylvania, how many kids are in economics over there because it's just a culture. There are cultures that I see determine people's trajectories and decisions that they're making, and there's no one sitting down and saying, "Whoa, wait, that's not like and it's a hard thing. It's a very, very hard thing. So what kind of exercises would you want people to take on this week to think about?
What I think people should try and do is that there are two things I would tell people to think about. Number one, try and think about what things actually put you into a state of flow. Okay, even if it's not your professional life, maybe it's just small things. I'll tell you a story here. I was a student of mine who I'll make the details quite vague here. But I remember a student of mine, one time we were out at night and we were listening to some music, and the student was out, and I just saw he wasn't happy at all. And I went over to him, I said, everything okay? He said, yeah, I'm fine. I said, you don't look great. And he said, yeah, I just don't like this. I said, well, how come you're here? He said, well, this is what everyone does. And so in the conversation, I said, well, like, what things relax you? And he basically described, although he felt a little embarrassed, there were certain fine arts projects, okay, which made him totally come alive. Right. You're talking about like a developed person. And what we did was, I pushed him to order some things off of Amazon and get the things he needed. And all of a sudden, he came back to me because he started spending some free time just relaxing by doing these projects. And he said for hours he'd be engaged doing them. He felt totally alive. He felt totally energized. It took him out of his week. And it was just like the most ultimate flow experience for him.
Right.
And number two, I think people should really try and figure out to make a bit of an accounting where they can become better at understanding what their natural strengths are. And those two tests are a very good place of where to start just to get the ball rolling. There's a lot of work you can do once you actually know those natural strengths, but at least that we can become people that can label them. I think if people can do those two things over the course of the week, we're in good shape.
Okay. So we got it last week. We have to continue what we were doing from last week, which is the P from PERMA, positive emotions, which is, I don't know if anyone, I hope you didn't. If you did do it, let us know. Okay. But which we said you should take a certain amount of money every day and give it away. If you're in bed at night, like, oh my gosh, I didn't give those $5 away, and not a $5 bill, $1 bill. Like, we got to do it, and how that changes you, and the gratitude, the emotional positivity of gratitude. Those are last week's assignments. So this week we're going to look at ways in which, if it's really, really super clear to you what your strengths are, and it's usually good to ask a friend, like, say, okay, go ahead, praise me, I promise I won't get my ego won't get in the way, but I need to hear, what am I good at? This is what I think I'm good at. And you have to be able to be ready to hear when someone says, you're actually, I know that you want to be good at that, but you're really not. Right. So there's the idea of figuring out what it is that you're naturally talented at. And then if you can to embrace that, think of ways where you see it manifest itself in relationships, in conversations, in the workplace. Try and be aware. So to step outside of yourself with a clipboard and so to say, hey, look at you do that, and how do I feel when I do that? And that's a bit what we're going to go for this week. Now we've got these 5 things, PERMA, okay? And now what these things mean is that when we're investing in all these 5 areas, the positive emotions, the engagement, okay, and next week relationships, and then meaning, and then achievements. When we're engaging in these things and we're investing in these things, the whole game is raised. Okay, the whole game is raised, and this is really what we're going for. I want to say, where do you go? I'm taking my brother out of. There he is. Don't leave yet. Right, but we're investing in these 5 areas, and it really will make you go online and look at what positive psychology is. Go to my brother's website down there on the ticker tape, Yosef Lynn. yoseflynn.com, and the Greatness Within seminars. There it is as well. You can sign up for those and learn those strengths. Of course, when it comes to profession, if you're doing something that you want to be good at and you're not good at, like, you'll be in big trouble, and the midlife crisis will come like a train wreck. Okay, but these are critical ideas, and somehow they all end up creating a smile they didn't have before, a positivity and a joie de vivre, and a life that is more enriched, more powerful, and really a truer version of you. I think it's fair to say, as we wrap up the show tonight, I find this idea of engagement flow very engaging, right? And I think that we all have to really see where we can find that, where we're really happy and where we shine, and we just love doing it, even in little things, and not be embarrassed. We live in a world that, like you said, tells you that these things are worthwhile, and those things are not worthwhile, and it's a dangerous trap. And maybe if I have some students that are watching, and I've had this conversation with before, that you keep running to do that and that and that, you're doing it for everybody else. You're not doing it for you. That's not what you want to do. I remember a guy that I told him, like, you really need to be a school teacher. Like, it's so clear to me that that's what you need to be doing. But of course, like, as a man in this school, like, you come from the world of like yuppie-dom and finance and all these things like this. Like, I just want to go teach. You have to break through iron curtains to get there to that place. The person finally did, and it's amazing. Amazing teacher. But it's very hard, so we have to be really honest with ourselves. And that's a tough thing. We're coming up soon to the end of the summer here, and Labor Day weekend, whatever that's going to bring. Who knows? We're going back to work after that. But in the Jewish calendar, coming to a time of the month called Elul, which is the month right before Rosh Hashanah, and we got to start thinking about these things in a serious way, right? We got to know what we're good at, because you have to look up and say, hey, listen, what did you create me to be? What are my natural talents? What are my gifts? What was so unique to my existence that the world couldn't exist without me? It's a very famous statement in Judaism, right? Bishvili nivra olam. If God looked at the world, looked at the mountains and the heavens and the seas and everything like that, and he said, not done yet. I got to make Yosef Lynn, got to make Shmuel Lynn, got to make you. And there's a tune, a music that you have to play. It's so unique about your makeup, and your talents are the greatest indicator of those, what you love to do. And it makes perfect sense when you think of that way, that if you can identify them, if you can nurture, cultivate, engage them, go into that. Obviously it's a sign it's the right thing, because you're going to feel you're in the flow and engaged. And of course, what it's going to do for you when you're able to purge that part of yourself and get that out there and get great and better at it and find where it goes, how much more so. So we're very grateful for your time and your attention, and we hope you enjoyed, and please leave us lots of notes if you need them. If you have them, we're willing to listen. Looking forward to seeing you next week, 5:30 Wednesday evening. We'll be discussing the R relationships, and looking forward to seeing you there. All the best. Good night.